Hello and welcome back. This Penguin Nugget is on a comprehensive lab on implementing task control. So, what do we have here? Boy, oh boy, oh boy, there is so much going on here. And that's why I arranged the window the way I did because when we are talking about implementing task control, we're talking about loops, conditionals, variables, a block of tasks, and rescuing a block of tasks. So there's so much going on here, and all of it is packaged in this lab. There are so many files involved. So hopefully you can pause the video and you can see what I have for you on the left side of the screen and continue to keep an eye on what's going on the right side of the screen. And there's just a lot going on. So I'm going to go over it very quickly, but you will have this demo and the files will be available through my GitHub repository. So let's take a look and see. First of all, here is the directory structure. I created a directory for this project and I called it control_project. And I wanted to show you the content of this particular folder using the tree command and expanding at level 2. And you will notice that I've got 3 directories and 10 files. It's important that, of course, you need to have your Ansible config file, okay? And the Ansible config file has a lot of valuable information. Please look at my previous Penguin Nuggets on Ansible config files. But that's how Ansible knows where to find different collections, right? So it knows where my collections directory is. So if I have AWS collections, or if I have POSIX collections, or if I have Cisco collections, it knows where to find the modules nested under those collections. That's where I have my group variables. So notice here that I created the group vars folder, and under that group vars folder, there is a vars file, of course, it's written in YAML, and as indicated by the file name, the variables in this file pertain to the DB servers nodes or managed nodes. So you can imagine that in my inventory file, right, that I have a group of managed nodes called DB servers. And it's, if you take a look at the playbook left side of this window, you will notice that this playbook will run on the managed node DB servers. So now what you see on this side, up here on this side of the screen, this is the content of the DB servers.yaml. So basically, these are all variables. These are all variables that I am using in the playbook to manage my DB servers. Most of them are used in this playbook. Some of them are used in other playbooks, right? You don't have to have a variables file for every playbook. You can have one big variable file and you can pick certain variables to implement in certain playbooks, right? And that's why it's a practice of mine to always use comments, right, in my variables document. So I would know, hey, this section is for defining variables and lists for creating user accounts. Well, this particular section, right, I'm not really using here in this playbook, and that's okay, right? But this section, which is about variables related to system hardware? Yeah. And of course, in the future, so this comes from Ansible facts, right? And it's about minimum RAM in megabytes, okay? And I have it set to 256 megabytes, but I can also set variables related to CPU, variables related to distribution, and so on, okay? So I can add more here as I go, depending on the playbooks that I'm having to create for my managed nodes. Okay, I've got one section for managed packages, so you can manage, so you can imagine that these variables will probably be used with the Ansible built-in DNF module, because we're talking about installing packages. I've got a section of variables related to services, so you can imagine that these variables will be used in the Ansible built-in services module, right? And take a look at this. This is really, really wonderful, right? And I have a nugget on lists. Please go back and watch it. But you will find out that I can take the variables declared here and I can inject them into lists. So I can loop through the items in a list. So this is helpful, right, when I create loops in a playbook. Okay, so bear this in mind. Take a look at my structure. I went with the simplest structure. Take a look at my naming convention, right? I don't want to make it long, so I'm using reasonably understandable abbreviations, right? So, PKJ for packages, SVC for service, and so on, right? But you can expect, when you take a look at this, you can expect that, this is a list of items, and they will probably be used in loops. So if you see packages, right, then probably I'm going to be looping against the items in the packages list. If you see services, then chances are I'm going to be looping over the items in the services list, right? And notice here, there is a section for files. So whenever you have files like that and you see source, destination, this section deals with declaring variables that will be used in the playbook, probably with two specific modules. Most likely it is the Ansible built-in file module and the Ansible built-in copy module, right? That's where you normally use these variables, and you can see them here. Okay, so I give you a quick run. I thought it would be most effective to start with the variables first, and then to leave you to pause and take your time and see how these variables, now that I explained them to you, how I implemented them inside my playbook, knowing that we're basically dealing with Python syntax primarily. So, when you call on a variable, right, you will have to use what? You will have to use braces, and these braces will be between double quotes. But you know that from previous Penguin nuggets. Okay, so you take a look at that. And one more thing I want you to pay attention to before you attempt to do this comprehensive laboratory exercise on your own. Notice the indentation. So I've got 68 lines in my playbook, and I want you to notice what I have in the headers, right? And I want you to understand I've also created comments for you for every single task and every single section. So read the comments and make sure that you understand what you're doing, okay? So you can have clear expectation of what the task is going to do and ultimately what the playbook is going to deliver. So For example, look at the indentation. The only thing that aligns indentation-wise with tasks all the way down is the handlers section, right? So look at this level of indentation. Tasks aligns with handlers because, as you know from a previous Penguin nugget that I created, right? Handlers run after all tasks in a playbook have already ran successfully, right? And of course, handlers is a type of conditionals because handlers will only run, right, if the task that has a notify clause may change on a managed node. So if you take a look at where do we have the notify here in this case scenario? It's right here, right? So even though that the task including the notify clause is right here, right? It really doesn't matter. All these tasks, every single task in the playbook will have to run first before the handlers section can run. Remember that handlers is considered a type of conditional because these handlers to run, right? The notify, the task that has notify has to have made change on the managed node, and only then it will have to go and notify the handlers. So also one thing to keep an eye on, notice this additional indentation when we created a task, and within this task, we created a block of tasks. So notice this task, right? And in my comment, I wanted to make sure that you're aware of it. It says a block of config tasks to set up the HTTPS files, okay? But notice here, right, this is the name of the task, setting up, the SSL cert directories and config files, right? And notice now at the further indentation, so here is a block, and let me move on with my cursor down here, and let's take a look. Notice that, right, what aligns with block here is you've got one task. Here is the name of the task. We're using the Ansible built-in file. Here's another task. We're using the Ansible built-in copy. And notice indentation-wise, what aligns with blocks is rescue right here, okay? So it is really important that you understand how indentation works. And of course, it's really easier to follow it here after having configured your Vim config file, right, to be suitable for YAML code. So go back to my Penguin nugget on configuring Vim for YAML if you haven't done so already. I'm going to run the play, right, so you can see the results. So let me open another tab here real quick. Here's another tab, and let me change users. So switch user to my Ansible user, which I'm using to manage all things Ansible. I'm going to provide my password, and I need to get into my project directory. So I'm going to cd into Ansible projects, and inside Ansible projects, I have control projects. And now I'm going to run my YAML file. So here is I'm going to call on Ansible-navigator. And of course, I'm using run, and method is std out, and the name of the file is control YAML. So here is Ansible navigator run mode std out control YAML. We're going to run the play. What did I make? What error did I make? Oh, yeah, typographical error, of course. A typographical error. Okay, so navigator. Okay. And we're running the play, and let's see what happens. Of course, I have already run this play before just to test my playbook. So it will not change anything because all the changes have already been made. So we're waiting for it to execute the control the YAML playbook. And here is the first task. Gathering, of course, Ansible facts needs to be gathered first. Show field system requirements. So it is skipped, which means the two managed nodes have at least 256 megabytes of RAM. Here's the ensure required packages are present. So the packages were successfully installed at the managed nodes. Ensure services are started. So the firewall D service and the HTTP daemon service both have started at the managed nodes. Creating the SSL cert directory. So we created a directory, right, for the secure socket layer certification for our HTTPS server on the managed nodes. That happened successfully. And we had to move certain files, such as the cert and the key, right, for the HTTPS servers. And these files were copied successfully from the control node to the managed nodes. And we configured our firewall successfully to allow HTTP on port 80 and HTTPS on port 443, right, to pass the web traffic. And we come back and we say 6 tasks ran. Nothing changed because I already ran it to test. So that's why it says 0 changes. But nothing failed, and that's exactly what we need to see. 0 failed. 1 skipped. The one that was skipped was the one about a failed system requirements. So it didn't fail system requirements because we had more than 256 megabytes of RAM available. Because had this requirement failed, the rest of the playbook would have not been able to run because we wouldn't have the required RAM to install and start the HTTPS services. And one last test to make sure that we really now have functioning HTTP servers. I'm going to use the curl command, and I'm going to say curl Ansible 1 just to test the web server. Okay. Oh, it's Ansible 1. Ansible 1. And we connect to the web server. I created a simple index.html, right? And it says, yeah, the fact that this page loaded successfully proves that you are an Ansible automation genius. And you are, if you successfully made it to this point, and you are ready for the certified Red Hat engineer test, go for it. Thank you for tuning in. And until the next Penguin Nugget.